engineering employment amid the new normal panel discussion. So we have engineers from across Canada, which is great, some in Nova Scotia, some in Ontario, and people joining us from all over the country. If you like this event and want to see more, Engineers Nova Scotia has events every month of the year, and now that we're switching online, there's a lot more opportunity for people across the country to join. So check out the website, engineersnovascotia.ca/events, for more things we're doing. And the YP committee is always looking for new members, so you can find out more info about us on the website. So going into the talk, as we all know, the engineering world has been affected due to the pandemic. Some groups have had even more work, and some have definitely the workloads have been affected. So we're going to get people, I guess, across the disciplines to kind of discuss, I guess, a variety of more in-depth questions, shorter questions, some yes or no, and even get some question answers from the audience on how individuals can improve their chances of finding really meaningful work. So throughout the talk, feel free to put down some Q&As, and we'll try to hit as many as possible at the end of it. So let's start off with introducing everyone. I'll just start off with myself. I'm the moderator tonight. I did civil at Dalhousie, and I work for Halifax Regional Municipality in their engineering training program. So let's go around the circle, I guess, starting with Alex. Where do you study engineering? What discipline were you, and where do you work now?
Thanks, Matt. So I studied civil engineering, and I got my civil engineering undergrad at Lakehead University in Thunder Bay, Ontario. Moved out to Nova Scotia here a couple years ago with my fiance for job opportunity for her, and after doing a couple different things, couple independent projects, a little bit of side consulting, I ended up here where I am now at Able Engineering. I'm the manager of the Kentville office of Able Engineering, and of course practicing civil engineering and all the projects that go with it.
Yeah, so I'm Kate Whitfield with Alta, calling in from Ottawa. So I'm an Ontario kid that went to UNB for engineering, and then Queen's for planning. So I'm a professional planner and a professional engineer, and I work in transportation. But I love this subject of networking and job hunting for engineering, so I'm looking forward to where we take the conversation.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Thibodeau. I studied engineering through St. FX and then through the Associate University program at Dalhousie. I'm an electrical engineer, and I'm currently one of the senior electrical engineers at Fleetway. But I've worked in in energy efficiency and conservation, energy distribution, and also the offshore oil and gas. An OEM for the oil and gas industry and military industries called Focal Technologies, which is in Dartmouth as well. So all my jobs have been local to Nova Scotia.
Yeah, Arshia. Yeah, thanks for having me on, and I'm really happy to be here. I think I'll have a lot to share just because I am also a recent grad. I graduated in 2019 officially, so it hasn't been too long. At least I like to pretend I'm a recent grad. I don't know if that counts, but and I actually studied in Ontario. I'm a graduate from Ryerson University, and I completed industrial engineering. So I have a little bit of a different background from the others on the call today. I'm ready to field questions. Oh, and where do I work? You asked the other question. and I work in finance. So also a very different avenue taken. So it should be good. It should be a diverse panel.
I guess, like, how would you see finding engineering positions amid the new normal? What do you think has changed?
Well, I started a new job.
There is a lot of social distancing,
sorry.
a lot more shift to digital.
Go
What are the
ahead,
big
Tiffany.
changes?
I started a new job
I'm dying to hear what you have to
in
say.
November. Yeah,
Arshia.
I started a new job in November, so that was all applied
Go ahead,
online.
Tiffany.
There's no meeting anybody in person. You're not seeing the offices, so you don't really get a feel for the office culture. So you have to be prepared to ask those kind of questions in the interview. But applying online is very different than walking with a resume, but it also means that they're putting a lot more of those job opportunities online through LinkedIn, through Glassdoor, through any number of sites. They're not just putting them on their own individual website now. They're really broadcasting stuff because they don't have the walkthrough applications. So that's
I think maybe I can answer that question. Maybe I can answer that question as well. I think the experience of trying to find a job in the traditional way of walking in with a resume, I think that's certainly maybe not even our generation on this call. I think the times have changed so much that people are very much relying on online portals, and as you mentioned, LinkedIn and Monster and what have you. There's a list of them that goes on that you can apply through. But specifically in the context of trying to find work and networking in this kind of the new normal, as you mentioned, it has really been an interesting challenge, and I'm sure other people are suffering from it as well. But there have been very interesting success stories that I've noted. Actually, some of my colleagues from Ryerson have recently, as they're also recent grads, they've been able to find jobs that are completely remote, and they may never see their team in real life, which is something quite interesting. And actually, I've never met my own team in real life, so there's that. And I think that's something we all have to come to accept, right? The nature of work changes all the time.
One thing I've especially found here in Atlantic Canada is the value of networking is a lot more here. So the connections you make in local industries here, and the people the people you have in your professional networks could easily be an avenue for you to find employment. I'm not sure really how things are in the rest of Canada now, but certainly is important here. And in my opinion, despite what's going on in the world, think
Also think about networking as it can just be an interaction. It doesn't have to be, I need a job, give me a job. So they can be just a connection that would be a future colleague. It can be a connection that someone helps somebody else get a job. Like they can also be short and sweet. It doesn't have to be a huge relationship. So it's just putting yourself out there your way. So if it's a short interaction, hello, nice to meet you, this is me, and walk away, and that's all you can handle, awesome, right? And that's digital as well. It applies to digital. But networking can be sincere, it can be just reaching out, because also the little bits you do now can have an impact 2 years. Like it might not feel like it's this instant job thing, but it could help you in a couple of years. So it's just sort of treating it with a little bit of open mind to putting yourself out there your way will pay off. And then your real question though was online. So yeah, it's LinkedIn. It's using conferences, using this correctly, like thinking about who else is here on the list, like LinkedIn connecting with the other participants. They might have a job for you, but they're going to get a job at another firm and maybe help you in a few months. Like it can be natural and then lead to something. So it's really important just to find your way. And then when you're networking, it's sort of, you have to think about what you bring and what you offer and a little bit about you. Because some people network with, I just want a job. I don't know what to do with that, right? So you have to have something sincere and sort of about you in your exchanges. But I'll stop there because I could go on the whole hour on this and that. That's okay. I'm meeting Alex for the first time. I'm gonna say, hey Alex, it was nice to meet you at this event. I thought that comment you made about X was really interesting. Like it's something tangible, it gives him something to reply to, or it can just be a connection on LinkedIn. It can just be, hey, it was neat, we were together, right? And maybe we'll connect down the road when maybe I'll have a project in Nova Scotia, maybe I'll learn a bit about able engineering. But like I just LinkedIn to people, honestly, when I'll look up everyone on this panel and Tiffany and I are connected on LinkedIn. Oil and gas, transportation, maybe, we don't have an exact relationship, but so what, like it's a sincere sort of like we shared experience, right? So I think there's a place for that.
Definitely. Yeah. Do you think, actually, maybe Tiffany or Arshia, do you think any of the social media platforms have like hindered networking at all, or do you think it's all been like major positives amid this pandemic?
This is very obvious to everyone, but like Snapchat is not a great place to network. Like I don't know if I need to say that, but it really is. Like LinkedIn is a great place, or even emails. I think they're classic and clean, and they really help you maintain a long-term relationship. And I just want to interject with like a little bit of a thought. I think we often think of networking as networking up. And that might be a mistake because sometimes your colleagues and your peers and even the people who are, just recently graduating and you may have, be 5 years into your experience may be great connections for you to know in the long run, right? You never know where someone's going to go and you never know when you're going to need to be able to pull on a string and say, hey, like I'm suddenly really interested in oil and gas and like I want to jump on that bandwagon, right? So it's not about a hierarchy of networking up or down. It's more so just finding what your interest is and pulling on those strings. So I would strongly recommend that, like looking for all sorts of social media platforms to see what people's activity allows you to, or to see what people's activity is, allows you to determine whether your interests match. But there are certain platforms that are more helpful and others that are less helpful, or more appropriate and less appropriate platforms to connect on. I think my favorite is always email, and I guess that makes me a little bit old school, but at least I'm not sending letters to anyone through the post, right?
Yeah, I will say like Facebook started when I was in university, and that's not the place to be connecting with colleagues unless you have become friends at your job. So there's always going to be one or two people that you will see outside of work. Facebook, that's fine. But LinkedIn is where you're going to have those conversations about a work-related thing. And I've got connections from people that I've worked with, right out of school to people that I work with right now. And that's where you can kind of go, hey, connect with the person who you interviewed with after your interview, which is probably going to be on Teams right now, or maybe Zoom, depending on the company. But then you can connect with the hiring person, with the HR that you interviewed with, and then that gives you an avenue to ask questions as that process goes through as well. So it's very difficult sometimes to get the email addresses for people in that sort of a context, but it's much easier to go, hey, I interviewed with, Krista in HR at this company. They're a little easier to find and a little bit easier to make those connections if you don't have the email address for everyone. Sometimes there's the panel interview, and you only actually had direct email contact with one of those people. So that would be
that's a good
tip.
That's a good point, Tiffany. Especially with pages like LinkedIn, if somebody doesn't want to be found, they're not going to have a LinkedIn page.
Yeah.
So that's a basic opening right there. If you look someone up, if you interviewed with someone and you look them up, you search them and find them on LinkedIn, then that's someone who's obviously put themselves out there for that reason. So that's almost an invitation to connect and, you know, say, how's it going? What's up?
I mean, you want to be careful what you're posting, that it's, you know, a professional, forward-facing kind of post on that sort of a platform, but definitely a good place to meet people. Like, I don't traditionally network and go out to events as often as a digital, even since pretty much ever. It's just pre-pandemic. It's just kind of one of the easiest ways for me to network. And it kind of translates, luckily. Do you want to just like type us questions?
What you do is interesting. Could we potentially connect? So they've given me so much of an interest and some kind of action. Other times I just get, thank you for connecting with me. I like your material. Thank you. Because we don't need, like they're not ready to have a conversation. Maybe I'm not going to offer it, but it's still a start. So that would be an example.
Let me try this one. So I think something that I've found personal success in is these kinds of settings where you know, I'm an attendee and I get to hear all these people speak, and something catches my ear, and I'm particularly interested in that. And what I'll do is I'll very actively think about what I would want to learn more about that topic, because I need something that will engage the person on the other side of the LinkedIn post or the other side of the email to be willing to have that conversation with me, or to recognize that they can create some sort of value for me. So what I do is I listen for these questions or these moments that I can, or these inspiring moments that lead to a question, and I'll always write folks, like I will always make it an effort to reach out after every single event to at least one person, right? And I set it as my bare minimum, where I try to ask one question at least, and make sure I'm engaging with the folks that piqued my interest. And just in that way, in the last week, I've had the opportunity to meet 3 or 4 new individuals. So like, it really doesn't have to be a formally written report about who you are, or as you mentioned, it can be something very small and concise that really makes the point and delivers exactly what you want to talk about. And usually it goes, hey, it was great listening to you speak. Here's my one question. Would you be down for a 30-minute coffee? Sometimes I get yeah, let me just ask the question and neglect the second part, and that's fine, right? I'm not afraid of rejection. That happens every now and again. That's totally okay. But most of the time, people are still excited. They're like, oh, you asked a question about something that I'm interested in? I will totally engage, right? I think I've only ever gotten like a brush off once. So I think that's a pretty good success rate.
Younger engineering students and new grads like come across. I know I did, and still do. Like you're saying, some people don't want to continue that interaction. Some do, but how do we learn from the rejection? Like at least in like job sense, or in networking. How do we just continue to move on and grow as individuals and as engineers? Thoughts on that one?
or with respect to the amounts or the number of successes that I'm attaining. And if the ratio is off, it means I'm not pushing myself hard enough, right? Like everything I should be doing should have an appropriate number of failures, and we should always be seeking failures in our life to try to improve ourselves and learn from those mistakes. So whether it's, you know, trying to figure out how some code works or trying to figure out how to network with another person, like failures are a very good indicator of how much potential success you have. So I like to think of it as like, if I'm failing about 20% of the time, especially in the context of networking, I'm probably doing just fine.
One thing to remember, or to consider, I guess, some companies are incredibly slow to respond to applicants. I have had applications that take 2 months for a company to respond back. So yes, you're unlikely to get a full rejection letter or something, but they may just be slow. And sometimes hey, I've applied, can you let me know how that process is going? If you've made that connection on LinkedIn or email to the hiring, someone in like the hiring department, or if you know someone who works there, you can get a bit of a read on the situation, because it may not be a rejection. It might just be delayed, especially right now. Stuff, when people end up out for 2 weeks they weren't expecting because they have to self-isolate or whatever. Not every business is set up to actually work remotely, contrary to popular belief. Manufacturing facilities don't go digital. You've got to be on the floor. You've got to be there. So there is a bit of slowdown right now with some processes.
Changed his cover letter and didn't do the same one every time. And wow, look, I got a lot more callbacks. So I totally agree with what's already been said. Just the reality of how many resumes I get, it's a huge pile, so you got to make it to the next round. Like, it's a lot of applicants. That's a different thing about process, but just on advice, you know, when you learn and you put into you adapt your application and learn from tips, you know, you can get a better result. So one of them was having cover letters that are tailored to the job was one tip. So you might not get rejected, or you'll get farther through because you put in the time to the cover letter. And we can tell, I can tell, I'm private sector when I'm getting a form letter. Absolutely.
Private, then like increasingly slower the bigger you get in government.
With those,
I was quite impressed with.
Yeah, I would say apply to pool positions if you're at all interested in government positions, because they can't hire outside the pool typically, and the pool only comes up once every couple of years typically. So if you see something, put it in. Don't expect it's going to happen right away, but know that your name's there, because I've got an ex-coworker that she did that. It was 4 years ago, and she just got in with a Coast Guard job, and she's thrilled to bits, but it took 4 years to get there. So, you know.
Actually, going back to networking a little bit, has anyone found, oh, sorry, I was cutting you off.
Nope, that was the end.
Did you have any? Okay.
I can't talk about the new normal.
I haven't heard from Alex in a while. How is volunteer? Go for Tiffany.
All right.
We'll pick up Alex after.
I've volunteered a lot before, but before the pandemic, before my family became 4 people, and I volunteered with Special Olympics. Just pick something that you're interested in. It doesn't need to be like sciencey or technical or engineering. something you're interested in, because you never know who you could be volunteering with, what someone in their family does, where they may work, and what other connections you can make outside of just meeting good people and potentially helping your community, potentially, you know, learning something new. Some of those skills are, the soft skills are important too. And that's, I guess, the biggest thing. I don't know how this applies with the pandemic, but I mean, hopefully we're like almost there and we can get back to some social interaction volunteering. Fingers crossed. Anyway, Alex.
That's a good point, Tiffany. The point you made about the soft skills and practicing your just interacting with people, if you are lucky enough to have that opportunity amidst this new normal. I personally, in the past, I've had a lot of success volunteering for, I guess, field-related events, things that are related to engineering in some way. When I was in EIT, I volunteered for the local chapter of our engineering organization, and I was lucky enough to get a seat on the local chapter as an EIT, and as a result of that, got to participate in numerous events. And I got to go in, go into schools and talk to students, and I got to do other things as well. Just met a great number of people, and I wouldn't have had an opportunity to do any of that if I hadn't volunteered. So yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of opportunity for making connections with people through volunteering, whether that be volunteering for career-specific events or not. And you're just meeting people, and like you said, Tiffany, you never know who you're going to meet.
That's the Organization for Transportation Engineers. It can give you something, and it does help differentiate on your resume. It doesn't mean you have to be the president of everything, right? We're not talking about that. But some kind of acknowledgement of that organization in your profession can really open doors. And it can be even reading their newsletters, and then you find out some names of people at firms. Reading newsletters and looking at company names. I see the chat box comment about learning about a company. Those are little sources of information that can tell you about a company, that can give you something to talk to someone about. So that's why also that those sort of using the professional associations and technical ones are really helpful. Can I just start with one really basic thing? A lot of people call me and they say, I'd like a job in civil engineering. And I'm like, like, are we talking structure, building, road? Do you mean modeling? Do you mean saying I'd like a civil job? You want sewers? Like what do you want to work on? Do you want to do roads? Do you want to do buildings, bridges? Like those are very different kind of careers, and it's okay to find your way into one area. So that's just first on, I have an engineering degree, and then the next is designations. I mean, as a junior or a new grad, you're not really looking for it. What we're looking for is eligibility for professional license or eligibility, like an interest in something. But honestly, all the extra letters after my name came later. So road safety professional is recent, lead is older, but it's like those things, it wasn't needed in the beginning.
Our team recently went through a hiring cycle, and we were looking for new interns to bring on to our today. And all these people landed these interviews through their own networking skills, and it's all during COVID time, so I know exactly what you're talking about in that context. My favorite thing to look at on a resume is always the interest, like the thing that doesn't relate to your profession, because often like we get, basically they're all duplicates. Like everybody knows Python, you know, everybody knows C, like at least in my industry, everything just sort of matches up. And then I always look at that interest and I tell them to tell me what they learned from that, right? So like my favorite question to ask is, okay, so you're a music producer, tell me how that relates to our work, right? And I'm looking for you to hit the key terms, like tell me that you're good at project management, time management, creative thinking, you know, delivering on promises and holding yourself accountable for the things that you've, you know, wanted to accomplish for yourself, right? So if you can tell me that, I believe that a lot of those skills are extremely transferable, and you know they'll show up in your work ethic, right? And that's, frankly, I look for that kind of stuff, because the technical skills you should have gotten from school. You know, the practical skills of professionalism and like writing an email or whatever, right? Or I don't know, doing that analysis, that you'll get on the job, right? That's my job. As you're coming onto our team, we teach you how to do those things. But your work ethic is something that like comes with you. It's part of who you are, and that's maybe never going to change unless you actively work on it. So show me proof of you having those soft skills. And that's really what I'm looking for. And when people can sell that, oh, I have a strong work ethic, or like I don't get beat down from a very difficult task or repeated failure, like those are big green lights for me. So I know you say designations, but for me, your hobbies and the things that drive you really are the good indicators of, at least for me, they're good indicators for your future success. I think.
Oh. You go, Kate.
Be out there in the world, and I'm going to learn a bit about your character, like a little bit about you. So there's lots of ways of representing that other side of you, of sort of your communication skills and ability just to sort of roll with it, right? But in municipality or in like a more government job, there is more of a My understanding is it's much more
Sometimes
like
you'll get a
Tiffany, did you
question.
have-
looking for keywords and certain things like that.
Sometimes you'll get a question in an interview like, talk about a time when you solved a very big problem, or talk about a time where you planned a project, planned something. And you can sometimes, you don't always have those experiences directly from school. They're related to something outside. Maybe you planned a large family gathering or helped, you know, maybe there was a family reunion or something that you helped plan or that you helped organize or were involved in. So you can kind of do that. There's also sometimes you've got stuff on your resume and you're like, it's kind of, it's there, like, oh, I know, you know, different operating systems or whatever the case may be. I've had an interview where the senior manager goes, oh, Apple operating systems. And I went, well, like, it's not all iPhones, that sort of thing. Come to find out later that he hated his iPhone. So if you're able to kind of, you know, have a little joke, don't be totally serious if you're not a totally serious all the time person. If you're not a really jokey person, don't try to become that, but be yourself as best as you can in an awkward situation, potentially awkward situation. Panel interviews are one of those things.
I'm literally at the edge of my seat here. Yeah, oh my gosh, I am the biggest fan of my mentor, and I wish he was here on the call. I'm going to forward him this and when it's a YouTube link for sure. So actually, my mentor is an old university professor, and he's going to laugh at that because he's going to think I called him old. But that's not the case. So we have a really, really good relationship because he was my professor at the time, and he was just a visiting professor. So after class, I would ask him a question about the content that he taught, and he knew that like it wasn't like the textbook material that I was interested in. I was actually interested in what he did in his career. And so that's where our relationship started. But certainly over the years, like he happens to be a marriage counselor and I'm married. So like we talk about everything from career stuff to, you know, life goals to relationships. Like he knew me before my husband knew me. So like we've known each other for so long and he's gotten to see that evolution, right? And frankly, like we don't talk to each other for 6 months at a time, but when we do, we are like on a call for like 4 hours, right? So I think my relationship with him is fantastic, and I think like if I could idealize a mentorship relationship, that would be it. But there's certainly a two-way back and forth, right? Like he's not just talking at me, he's not just giving me the advice. It goes the other way too. Not that I'm giving him advice, but like I think I help him see things from a different perspective, whether it's from a student's perspective or, you know, like this topic of trying to get a job or trying to network during COVID is such, it would be completely foreign to him because he doesn't have to do that anymore. He's effectively retired, right? So he gets to see from the flip side and he gets to have that experience as well. So I love what Tiffany said before because it is all about authenticity, right? And if you could be your truest self and present yourself in the most genuine light, whether it's in an interview or whether it's on a panel or whether it's in a networking relationship, like your best version will just shine through. And ideally, everybody on this call has a really good side that we all want to meet, right? So when we're talking about mentorship, that's certainly the way to go. But if you want to put it in the context of COVID and in the context of people being so far apart, I think you can also develop some pretty powerful relationships through the internet. Like, for example, I was recently on a call where I was just a participant, and I heard one of the senior managers, or actually AVPs, speak about a topic that I really liked. So I followed my little sandwich methodology there, and I wrote her a text on Teams, and it worked. So her and I had a conversation, and now I'm seeing her again in 2 months. And again, I'm going to assured that I'm going to book another call at the end of that for another 2 months. And hopefully, even though I have a malicious plan here to make her my mentor, hopefully she won't see through that. And over time, she will also develop the habit of wanting to check in with me, right? So it really is a two-way relationship, and you have to show that. I hope I answered your question.
This is not a job podcast, but I have been listening to Lockdown Parenting, which is based in the UK with I've got 2 kids at home. How are you working? How are you getting stuff done? So find something relatable to you. It's not going to be parenting for most of you, but it might be. Highly recommend.
Alex?
A little bit kind of civil engineering nerdy on my end, but I've been listening a lot to the engineering podcast, the Civil Engineers podcast, which is
So good.
hosted by the Engineering Management Institute. I have a keen interest in business and business development, and they really hit on a lot of things I'm interested in. So every time I'm in the car, I put it on.
Every civil engineer should be listening to that podcast, 100%. Kate? Sorry.
I love those answers because they're going to be so much better than mine. my favorite podcast and stuff that has really shaped me as a person holistically is Radiolab. I don't know if anybody listens to it, but Radiolab has taught me that it's like my worldview is too narrow, right? And to see it from other people's perspective and to have a more holistic worldview is extremely important. And it really has helped me shape my understanding of human behavior and change management, which is a big part of my profession. And also just economics in general. So I think that's a particularly important thing for people to just know on a general level. So Radiolab, that's my plug.
If you just want to connect with others, that's like the best book to be a great friend, great employee, and like, yeah, just make human connections so much easier. Now we're just going to switch. Interesting. And in engineers' early career, what matters most? Compensation, opportunities for growth, work-life balance? What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, happy to answer that one. So I thought a lot about this. I've thought a lot about this recently, actually, and from my perspective, when compensation was the biggest deal for me just back then, finding the most number of dollars per hour. But soon after graduating, I definitely came to realize figuring out what your interests are and getting yourself on that path as early as possible is probably the most important thing early in your career. If you don't necessarily know where you want to go with your career, it's your early engineering EIT period, whatever it may be, is a good opportunity to try different things. But yeah, definitely get yourself on the path where you want to be heading. Don't worry as much about compensation. There'll be lots of time for that later.
Great. And Tiffany, what is the most meaningful icebreaker you have for an engineer if you don't know what their discipline is or anything else about them? This is the top one. Oh no, I think your mic's not on.
Just like for yourself. So we kind of just find that sort of fun stuff.
Arshia, do you have any, what's your top active listening tip?
Oh, I love this. I can't pick my top one, but I certainly think that taking notes is a very good indicator that you're listening to me. And maybe that's like self-affirming or whatever, but I'm going to stick with it. If I think I'm saying something important and you can see that I am trying to give you some sort of information, you should certainly be writing it down. And it doesn't have to be, physical notes or whatever, but even if you're typing away on your computer or you pull out your phone and you're, writing it on a sticky note, that's very important to me. It's a very good indicator that you can hear what I'm saying and you're writing it and interpreting it in your own words. But I think like a head tilt does a pretty good job. If you just want to get your point across. Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Should be doing that more here.
Yeah, you got to read your audience, right? You can't just...
That's a good point. And what actions can young professionals make in order to shape an organization, even if they aren't in charge of decisions yet? Alex?
Well, I would say don't be afraid to express your ideas. A lot of people will say there's no such thing as a bad idea. The only bad ideas really are the ideas that never get discussed. They never get suggested. They never get brought into the conversation. So if you've got an idea and you think it could shape the organization somehow, talk to somebody about it. Talk to your peers. Talk to your boss. Don't be afraid to bring something up. Just have a conversation.
Nice. Let's just go straight into the yes, no paddle questions. Does everyone have their paddle out there? Ready? See those paddles? Oh, Kate's responding to a question, sorry. Okay, let's go to the first one. So question one, should you include high school accolades on a resume for positions after university? Yes or no? Got no, 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 yes. I think Arshia has some really good high school accolades. So
No, I'm looking for those soft skills, you know, like high school was probably, you know, great time and you had a great time to explore those soft skills. So
that's a good point. And just to hear the other side, Kate? Question 2. Should you ask the potential salary during your initial interview? I think yes for all. Yeah, it's good to know what you're
They'll
walking.
often ask you what you're expecting. Sometimes it's better to turn that around.
How do you do that? What are you expecting, Tiffany?
Yeah, so sometimes it can be. Sometimes you'll be asked, "What are you expecting?" and then they'll be like, "Ooh,
I heard
she
the
only
best
wants
answer.
this much."
Yes. Very good.
Depends on the industry. Some people will like that. But you can say, "Hey, I'm looking for something that's commensurate with my experience. Do you have what does someone typically make in this industry at your company?"
it would be helpful if you looked it up on Glassdoor. Yeah, that goes a long way.
Glassdoor is not always reliable, but it's somewhere to start, and most of the engineering societies will have a salary survey as well. Also, not totally reliable, but like get a few inputs.
Yeah, Engineers Nova Scotia has that salary survey available on the website for free. So go to engineersnovascotia.ca and check that out. And Kate, you're on the edge of your chair, so I know you have something to contribute here.
A great answer recently was like Tiffany's, which is it's okay to say of an organization of your size, I'm sure you get competitive wages. You tell me, like that's okay to say. But I don't think as someone who negotiates, it's not like we're trying to undercut you. We might have actual bands and actual like things relative to other people. So it's not like tell me so I can get you as cheap as possible. So it's okay to ask, but it's okay not to be told, right? Like it's not the end of the world. Public sector is published and it's much more fixed. Private, it can really range. So be careful with sources and go in also with an open mind. It's not an easy subject, and it's something for your mentor to help you with.
I feel like there could be a whole like hour and a half webinar on how to negotiate. So if you're getting to that stage, audience, that's something to be looking up on YouTube, on Google, finding webinars and ensuring that you get paid what you deserve. And another question, should you only send a resume if a posting doesn't ask specifically for a cover letter? Also split. We'll leave it at that. And are you in favor of the 6-hour workday? Yes. No, no. Oh, another big split. Are you in favor of the 4-hour work week? I don't think anyone's heard that. Tim Ferriss wrote a book on that, and I feel by your confused faces, it's no all around. Oh, I meant 4 hours. It's a different way of thinking.
I don't think you meant 4 hours.
I don't think it really applies to engineering. I have no idea how that would be possible. But question 5, we're lightning through these because I want to get to all the amazing Q&As we have here. Is it true that if you stay in government too long, you won't be able to find work in the private sector? Thank goodness. 6,
You might be surprised at the salaries, though.
making, oh, wait, up or down?
Depends on your industry.
Medium?
It's hit or miss.
Fair. Okay, question 6. Making too many lateral moves can hinder your chances of promotion. Excellent. And can you use the word cheers as a closing in a professional email? Okay, everyone else. Same. I'm sorry, Alex, by the way. Okay, question 8. Is it socially acceptable to pass out business cards amid a global pandemic?
Doesn't it sometimes just become like a COVID vector? Should we not be, I don't know how this works.
The person on the receiving end, whether or not they take it.
What should we do instead? Actually, I want to dive deeper in this one. So those who said no, Tiffany or Arshia, how would you share your info in like an easy to digest way?
Add me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
LinkedIn QR code. You remember that, Matt.
Alex also has the best business card I've ever seen. QR code on the back. Quickly get his LinkedIn profile. And question 9, are pajama pants okay to wear for an interview? If you're only showing the top half. No. Yeah. No. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's go right into these audience Q&As and dig through. And just if someone had one from the panel they want to bring up right away as I'm cruising here, feel free to start chatting. But if not, I'll start with one that I saw, because I know a few people in the audience are either doing their grad degrees or graduated from masters or PhDs. I'm wondering how it changes when you have those credentials behind you and you're searching for jobs. Kate, how did it change for you? Exactly.
So
is there a difference, or do you think there's a difference? Does it matter?
Like searching for a job after a master's, searching for a job after undergrad? I'm going to say there's a ton of people with masters, so your job hunt is still really hard. I'm sorry, but I give honest answers. But I get a lot of people with masters. So then it's what you did with your masters. It's what your interest was. It was communicating your
That's a good point. And does anyone else have another contribution to that one? If not, I heard a couple people asking about automation. And Tiffany, what's your understanding of like the automation and control system in Nova Scotia, and what, like in general, what it looks like for electrical engineers in Nova Scotia?
And I know that there are some companies that do. There's a company in Bedford that does SCADA screens for industry and programming, and they've got a sales department, they've got an engineering design department, they've got a programming department. There are companies that build PLC cabinets, which I worked at as a co-op student, but they've been bought by Rockwell now. So there's an office for them. There's Siemens. There's lots of those companies around here. Burnside is full of them, to be quite honest. I don't know what the industry is really for them right now. But I mean, you've got a lot of manufacturing in Burnside that a lot of people. I work with engineers that have never entered Burnside, and I can't figure out how they've managed to avoid it because almost all the companies have an office there. There's a lot of PLC controls required for, food production. There's, I know engineers that work on the ice cream line at Farmers and Scottsburn and Agripure and those companies. So don't always look at like an engineering firm. If you're looking at PLCs, you're probably looking at industry, a manufacturing industry predominantly, or a manufacturer of the PLC cabinets and pieces, which we have here too.
Right on. And Alex, if you were graduating in June, when would you start applying to jobs? That's what I like to hear.
Here, and after several months of interviewing people, I hired a young guy who's going to be coming on with us in May when he graduates. So apply early, and there's definitely a chance you'll get the interview and you'll get hired, and that company will wait for you to graduate. They're not going to give it away to someone else.
Nice. Actually, one for, oh yeah, go, Pat, Kate. A 100%. I tell so many people that, like, in a lot of ways, getting a job as an engineer is a lot like getting a job as a dishwasher or anyone in the, hospitality field. It's like you're saying, there's resumes on a pile. The resume might look different, but it's still a position. It's still a job. It's a way to earn a living. And this one's for Arshia. It's more on the industrial side. Do you have any anyone who's in your graduating class that went into the construction industry? How did they go into that? And what are they doing? I think that was Mohammed B.Eng. So take that advice, reach out. And actually, yeah, and to follow up on that, my former supervisor was in banking and then transferred into project management and construction on the municipal side. So industrial is like one of those amazing jack of all trade disciplines that can be applied just about anywhere. And then, yeah, speaking of energy engineering, what have people seen on the solar or hybrid renewable side? Has anyone had any experience with that, or like more colleagues that have worked in that side? Might be interesting either from like Tiffany from the electrical side, or maybe even Alex from the construction side.
From the electrical side, I mean, there's a lot. I'm in Nova Scotia, so we've got energy efficiency and conservation as one kind of stream, which is helping the customer use less energy so that you can produce less energy. and save the greenhouse gases there. There's also wind, hydro. There's the offshore. There's a lot of offshore wind that's happening right now, trying to find ways to get that electricity from the turbine to the shore. There's the equipment involved in building the turbine. So there's fiber optic rotary joints in turbines. There's electrical slip rings. There's any number of kind of associated industries. It's not just like Nova Scotia Power. There's all the kind of extra things around it, and we've got the Gulf or the oh my gosh, the tidal power that's going in right now. So there's some stuff on land with that. There's companies doing some really cool stuff there as well. Again, associated or directly for the companies that are doing that. So be open to industries that are new and small, if that's what interests you. Unless you're going to Europe, in which case they're huge.
If you had any thoughts on that, Alex? If not, I had a follow-up for Tiffany.
Yeah, sorry, Matt. I was in the chat box when you asked me, and I really don't want to make you repeat yourself again because I know we're on a limited time budget here.
No worries. Back to Tiffany. So I think someone in the chat box asked about working in other provinces or even other countries. There's a lot of opportunity for renewable in Europe. How do people break into like a whole another continent?
I kind of wish I knew. I grew up kind of moving all over because of my dad's career, being in the military. So we kind of were every which way. There's a lot of multinationals locally, so you may be able to get in somewhere here. We've got, dozens of multinational companies that have offices in England, in the UK, on mainland Europe, down in Australia. Some of the contracts that they're working on are for other countries. And so there may be an opportunity that maybe you start locally here and then you can transfer. My brother transferred down to Texas with oil and gas. I've got friends from university that have transferred down to Australia. I haven't been able to manage to do that, but I got a lot more people to move with me. So, but if you're, offshore oil and gas, there's a lot in Aberdeen in Scotland. There's also a lot of offshore, like tidal stuff in Scotland as well, or the Netherlands, Germany, France. I don't know if that answers.
That's amazing.
I totally don't know really how
Arshia.
to do it, but
Oh no, it does. That's actually an amazing way. Start locally and move globally. And there's a question for Arshia from a second-year industrial engineer. Did you have any private equity, internships while you were in school? And how did you break into the financial sector?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have a very short attention span, so I guess that works in my favor in today's day and age. I don't know. Let's see. Maybe 50 years from now, I'll regret having said that. But actually, through university, it turns out I wasn't a great student because academia is just really not my cup of tea. So I figured by second year, third year that I really needed to get into the industry and get a taste for it and see whether I even like this stuff. So I managed to land myself a summer internship at a transportation company, actually. And what I ended up finding is that engineering was great, and what I really loved about engineering was making other people's lives better. So that really led me into the process improvement world. And to answer your question, no, I've never worked in private equity. That's I don't know how I feel about it. Maybe in the future, but I don't know. It seems like a very tough world to be in, and the demand, like that work-life balance, is incredibly challenging. I know folks who do 60 hours at the minimum, right? And that just doesn't work for me. I have other things going on as well that I'd like to take care of. But I realized that process engineering was the right field that I wanted to be in, and I actually work in technology in securities. So close enough? I don't know. It's your call. And I do get a lot of exposure to folks who are in finance and people who have a very like they perhaps have no technical skills, and I provide the backbone for that, and I help support other folks in developing their technology solutions. So I do a lot of software development, and I do a lot of teaching. Honestly, that's a big part of my job, and I work in securities, so I get a little bit of the exposure to finance as well. So I hope that's a long-winded way to answer. No, no equities experience under my belt. So not yet.
Basic example in my field. When people write me and they say, I'm an avid cyclist that loves alternative transportation, you know, avid cyclist, like I know what that's not what you need to write me about. It's not about being avid. It's not about cyclists, what I do. It's about transportation. It's about moving people. It's about community. So I can sort of tell if someone says they really love my subject, but they don't talk about people. They don't talk about human. They don't talk about community. I can sort of see that they're new in the field. Okay, I'm trying here to give an example. So when you're trying to get across in your structures interest some language that shows that love of that subject of the person asking about breaking into structures, your cover will be much more powerful, because instead of just wasted language like I'm motivated, I'm detail oriented, and I want a job in structures, don't waste stuff on that. Tell a story about a project you did and use some of the correct terms, and you will get much farther, because it's reflecting the job that you're applying for. Weird answer to your question, Matt. It's because I've been reading the question box.
I can start off here, Matt. Not having any degrees past my undergrad, I can't really say from experience. But I've known a number of people who have gone down that road, and you know, I've got a lot of people in my network who are highly specialized. And I guess what I want to say is if you've invested that much in your education, that much time, and that much money and commitment and everything else, this is the field that you've chosen to pursue. You wanna stay on that path. you know, don't just take the first job that comes your way. Cast a wide net and look for jobs all across the country that are in your specialty, and be willing to go where the work is and do what it takes to get your foot in the door somewhere and start your career in the workforce.
All right. And
Matt, I'll just add to that. So, I mean, Ken said it, show, don't tell. I love that line. I get that a thesis is specific, but you're going to know, for instance, if you're going to talk about road safety, for instance, that's, oh, I'm interested, but then maybe a little bit about pedestrian safety, or a little, like one more line, and you can hook somebody like that. So it's great about your specific research, but it doesn't take a lot to show that you like more than sustainable transportation. That's a famous word. We love that word, but you could give a little more to show that what that means, which is like moving people.
Mind if I jump in a little bit on this one?
Choice, convenience. Like there's some easy words that would get someone's attention.
Oh, I just have a tiny thing to add. Electrical is very broad. Know your skill set. I am not an electronics engineer. I'm never going to be an electronics engineer. But the jobs will all be posted as electrical. Just like I know electronics engineers that do not want to touch big power. So pay attention to that. Don't apply to something willy-nilly without really reading the detail of the posting just because you want a job. If you're kind of open to anything, then cool. But like, I'm not going for something in fiddly electronics, just like my friend is not going for something that's got a transformer the size of a house that could kill them. That's me. That's it. What I've been told, because you can get your first job and then still go through a large corporate layoff and then have to start from scratch again, and be totally fine. I promise. It will still be okay. People told me that. I didn't believe them. It'll be fine. You can totally switch industries. That's cool too. Your most recent work experience should have the most information. Unless it doesn't apply to the job you're applying to, then kind of shrink it a little bit, bulk up. You can change your resume based on the job you're applying to. It's a little bit more work. It's just like changing your cover letter. But if your job that you're in, your most recent job maybe doesn't apply a whole lot, just like remove a few of the bullets and then grow the other sections. So just balance it off against what's most important. And you can still include stuff on your resume, like I went to, you know, X from whatever year to whatever year. But it's one line. It's not, and I was on this committee and this committee and this committee and this committee. Just mention it, because sometimes you'll be in a meeting or an interview and you don't know that everyone there went to MUN, but the person interviewing you went to Dal, and that's cool to them that you went to Dal and they want somebody else. They're going to have a little conversation with you about that. So those little details can still be left, but like Kate said, small. Don't make a big deal about it, but kind of leave the breadcrumbs for the conversation to happen.
I would say just persistence. Persistence is everything. It's like we've talked about this in this session a number of times, but you know, you'll put yourself out there a lot, and you're going to have to deal with a lot of rejection. That's just part of the whole process, unfortunately. All you really need is that one opportunity, and that could turn into your career. So just persistence is my number one thing. Apply for those jobs, stay on it, follow up with people, do your networking, volunteer, every opportunity you can get, and just be persistent.
You're muted, Matt. One thing that I've noticed, some people come in, they're like, I'm the engineer and I know everything. You probably don't. In a lot of industries, there's going to be that guy on the floor, that person that's been there for 15, 20 years. Make friends with them. Learn what they know about the corporation, about the culture, about the work you guys do. Because I've seen engineers come in and go, I'm the engineer and I went to school and and then have the production people talk about them behind their back because they just really don't appreciate being talked down to, because they have 20 years experience in this industry. They know the customer, they know the work they're doing really, really well. So make friends with everyone, but don't act like you know everything unless you are 100% certain that you are the smartest person in the room, and you're never going to be that person.
Chasing, even if you have that job that you wanted 2 years ago, that's going to change. So keep reaching out, keep building connections, and eventually you'll be the kind of person that's going to provide people support to work up the ladder, and you'll be their mentor. And even at that time, reach out and make those connections, because you know, career is one thing, but we're all social beings and we all need each other, especially in times of COVID. So reaching out is super, super critical to your career success, and also like mental health and well-being and all that good stuff. So don't be afraid to, you know, drop someone a text and be like, hey, how's it going? And you never know where that conversation will go. So reach out, reach out, reach out.